discussion should take place at the time of the storage agreement or at the time of my proposed extraction of?
So I think in a situation where the proposed extraction is at a later date than the water is going into storage, then we wouldn't be able to do the material injury analysis at the time the water goes into storage. But then closer to when, for example, if you have a construction project coming up and plan to be pumping more for that, estimating, okay, once you know when that's going to happen, we expect in 2 years, we'll need the water for that. We then are able to look at the trends in water levels in the area and have a better sense that, okay, within the next 2 years, they're unlikely to change a lot. But for example, if you think, oh, within the next 10 years, I might do this project, I don't know exactly when, there's more uncertainty about what the basin conditions will be further into the future.
This is Maureen. I'm going to jump in to clarify.
Maureen.
Our preference as the engineer is that the material injury is done closer in time to when the water is planning to be extracted. And so a storage agreement could be entered in with no production location identified. And then in the future, when the water is ready to be extracted, a material injury is performed at that time. That's our preferred. Understanding that people do want to forecast when they're going to use it and have that baked into their storage agreement, we're saying it's okay to do one when you enter the storage agreement, but we need to know the location, the timing, the exact plans. And that is closer in time to when you're extracting it. We can be more certain, and we'll have a different method, same method, different level of certainty for the material injury. If you're at the time of the storage agreement forecasting that you're going to use the water well in the future, we're going to also try our best to do a material injury, understanding the uncertainty, but most likely be conservative because there's a range of scenarios that could occur in those future conditions. Hopefully that clears it up a little bit.
So, and I'm just trying to flesh this out so when we get to questions, we can be quicker about it. So if I'm either a landowner or a public water provider and I enter into a storage agreement with my carryover, and I say, I'm going to use this water in the same wells I've been using my production right. What do you look at then?
In that scenario, we would need to know, what is the total amount of production that is being proposed. And in order to use the stored carryover water, that total amount of future production needs to be named. And, in the analysis, if it's a little bit of the stored water, a little bit of the production right that's used, we look at everything for that. But, we would factor in, okay, using the production right, so far, if it's similar to what's been used in the past, if that's what you're going to continue to keep on using, we can evaluate that. We note that there is full flexibility of the production rate for the use of production rights and active carryover water that doesn't exist under the judgment for the use of the stored carryover water.
Okay, then let me go further with one more question and then I'll let you get on with it. So I'm a public water provider and we've had 4 years of drought and I'm going to have to rely on my stored carryover basically for public safety water. I mean, we're running out of water. We have to pump it. I don't think as a public water provider, I want the WATERMASTER saying, no, stop pumping and let your customers run out of water. How do we avoid that?
That is a
Yeah.
difficult question.
So I
And-
think that is for the water master board to decide what is important in that time of emergency. As engineer, we can help quantify the potential material injury to the basin. But if you need to override that for emergency concerns for public water, I think that's a value question and not a science question.
Okay, and that's something we could build into what we're going to come up with, and that's probably more of a general counsel question.
Yeah, I think that in part, and it's our seventh question in the key questions to discuss today. So I think the board has some discretion there, but there needs to be clarity about what an emergency consists of.
No, understood. Okay. And I jumped ahead. Go ahead, Derek.
I did have a question on 3. If you're still on 3.
Actually, we're going to wait till the end. I was just trying to clarify so that we can get our questions in order. I probably didn't do a good job, so I'll just shut up now. Go ahead, Craig.
We'll move through these quickly. Question number 4. What should be the process for adding carryover to an existing storage agreement? Aging carryover, we're recommending be automatically added to the material injury existing storage agreement,
And
as
no,
long as the information remains pertinent concerning their usage, timing.
no further fees or anything. We just add it to the original one.
I never say no further fees.
Minimal fees.
Well, that's something we're going to have to discuss as the board.
That's something the board
Yes.
can.
Number 5, what fees should be imposed and when? This is anticipating your question, Rob, Mr. Chair. The fee generally is submitted at the time the application is presented, unless there's a deficiency of information that doesn't allow the engineer to go forward with the MI analysis. But in general, when the application's made, there's sufficient information, the fee will be due at that time. And 6, should there be a requirement to produce certain categories of production rights as a precondition? There's no such requirement in the judgment. We think that's something that you're going to have further discussion on, but there's no requirement that there be an order that you use certain category of water before you use the water in carryover storage agreement. We think it provides flexibility. I know the engineer has some strong feelings about the prioritization issue. But I think the important thing is there's flexibility as to what category of water production right you use, and you're not required to follow a rigid system. Maureen, Arden, you had comments about this one. You want to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Craig. We fully recognize that the judgment doesn't have a requirement for an order, and parties can choose the order that they want to use the production in. However, we do strongly recommend that parties use their production rights in active carryover water before using stored carryover water for a couple of reasons. The first one is that this allows the party to have the most flexibility for the longest time of using their production, because there aren't production rate restrictions on the use of production rights, imported water, return flow, or active carryover water. Once a material injury is analysis is required for the use of stored water, the party needs to say how much they plan to use, and that puts some restrictions on the water use. And we just don't want parties to be in a situation where they're putting unnecessary restrictions on their use, and inviting more work for the water master to be reviewing everything. We also want to emphasize that, in many scenarios, it's likely that a party would be pumping at a higher rate than their production rate to go through their active carryover water and production rate. And so by the time that then they would be using their stored carryover water, we have more information about how local conditions are responding to higher rates of production, which can help us have a more informed analysis of the material injury analysis. So, this is a situation where, we fully recognize that, parties can use the stored carryover water in the order that they wish, but we also recommend that they aim to use their active carryover and production rights first, just to maximize their flexibility and also help us have a more informed analysis.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? That leads us to the last question. What considerations should be incorporated in the carryover storage agreements for public water supply or emergency needs? I think this is where the discussion will come as to the specificity and keeping in mind the judgment's requirement that there be uniformly applicable rules, that we not get sideways to that.
Explain that a little bit.
There's a requirement that there be uniform rules. There not be separate rules for public water suppliers versus landowners. It's to be an equitable system of fairness, that everybody gets their proportionate share of the fairness of the deal. So we need to keep in mind the judgment's requirement on that and act accordingly. We suggested that at this point, the 7 issues are out there. Are there others that we want to add at this point? Otherwise, our suggestion is we ask for comments from the public at this point, and then the AC.
Okay, anything we want to add to this list? No? Okay. We're open for public comment. Don't all rush up at one time. Any public comment out there? Oh, Rami, come on up. You almost lost your chance.
I was debating it. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to kind of give some feedback on some of the items that Craig had discussed along with Arden. Just for the record, my name is Rami Gindi. I'm a principal engineer with the LA County Public Works, Waterworks Districts. What I wanted to clarify is a few things on the district's positions and address some of the concerns that were raised at the advisory committee that's in the memo. I think we all recognize carryover water and its storage provides a clear and direct benefit to the basin. We're all on the same page. We're all in agreement on that. It helps protect the basin and supports long-term resilience. As such, these storage agreements should really protect each party's water rights, recognize the basin-wide benefits of storing carryover water and avoiding unnecessary regulations or restrictions that make it difficult to use that water when it's needed.
Rami, I'm sorry, we're getting some reports that people can't hear you. Is that speaker on?
It sounds like it's on. The green light is on.
Checking.
We're good.
I just got a couple texts saying that people online.
Okay, maybe speak a little louder.
I'll move it a little closer.
That's
Is
great.
that better?
Okay, thank you, Rami.
I'll try not to bite on it. So I think the judgment itself reflects the unique nature of stored carryover water. I think we recognize that, and the physical solution specifically requires material engineering analysis for new production, and that's under 18.5.13.110 and 18.5.13.2. And material engineering analysis for transfers under 16.1. What it does not explicitly require is material engineering analysis to be completed for extraction of carryover water. However, we do understand that the WATERMASTER engineer's position, that from a practical perspective, as it might be easier for us to conduct material engineering analysis, and doing so may provide the party that's in the agreement some certainty as to their ability to extract out water, and it really provides a benchmark for when that agreement has been signed. It provides a benchmark of what groundwater levels are at that point. So to the extent that a material engineer is required, we do believe that it should be at the time that the execution of the agreement. And I'll talk about it in two phases, that when we do execute the agreement, there's a material injury. And like Craig says, it should be limited to the local impacts. The second part or phase two of that material analysis happens when you add a new extraction source. And to us, that should be the only times that a material engineering analysis should be conducted. The concept of trying to do this material engineering analysis when you extract the water really takes away that certainty for the party that's in the agreement to know when and how to pull out the carryover water. I want to also kind of talk about some of the advisory committee comments specifically related to our December letter. The letter that we had submitted was, our goal is to be transparent and proactive. I think some of the advisory committee felt that we were seeking priority rights. Well, that is not the intent. The intent of the letter was for us to be proactive about talking about emergencies. And when the emergency happens, we don't want to sit on our hands and wait for a material engineering analysis. We want to be able to act quickly during a public emergency that's associated with health and safety. And this is not just for public water suppliers or waterworks. We're talking about for all parties. Again, I'll close off by saying this agreement should minimize obstacles to allow folks to pump their rights when they need it. It provides that reliability factor, and it allows folks to continue to have that faith to put away the carryover water, to be able to extract it when they need it without any limitations or obstacles. So that being said, I appreciate the opportunity to comment on it.
Great. Thank you, Rami.
Thank you.
And thanks for that clarification. I think that was very helpful.
Rami, do you want to take any questions, or do you just want to do the statement and that's it?
It depends on the question.
So, I just had a question. You know, early on in the judgment, I'm going before we finish the judgment. I mean, discussions on emergency basis occurred all through the 2000s, you know, whether it was water purveyors or farmers. A great example is when you're farming here in the Yellow Valley, you have a variety of factors that can impact your water usage, from ambient temperatures to humidity to wind. Wind's always a well, you have to be accountable to that. When you do your water accounting, it becomes evident that you overpumped what you're supposed to. Then you become subject to a replacement water assessment, or you can dip into your carryover water supply or purchase outside carryover to meet the needs of what you overpumped. And the reason that I bring that up, and it's a discussion's sake on it, is it seems like there's kind of a quasi mechanism there for an emergency situation on pumping that's already occurred. So if District 40, for example, was in an emergency situation, the AVAC's canal breached and there was no longer water available for a period of time, there's no switch that we can flip to shut the water off. You know, you guys can go out there and pump, you could continue on, and when the accounting comes due, it would be, hey, we're gonna just take some of our water from our storage agreement, move it over there. Some people would be hesitant to that because it would say, well, you're creating your material injury analysis and kind of making it toothless, you know? But you're really not, because in the situation that I stated on farming, for example, if I did that every year, I'm no longer following what I stipulated to in the judgment, meaning I'm gonna follow the rules. I had a, you know, one-time emergency thing. That's what it is. We rectified it. We got carryover water. The basin's healthy. Everything's fine. We've done this before with a case was Olin Derrick's ranch that I think there was a situation occurred where overpumping happened. They had an option, pay the replacement water assessment or give us carryover water to replace what had happened. So what I'm struggling with, and I value your opinions big time, is it seems like there's kind of a mechanism there. Do you see where that wouldn't be applicable to what you're talking about with the water suppliers?
So the way we kind of laid it out in the letter was very specific to prolonged droughts associated with also a loss of the imported water through the aqueduct. So the combination of those two things, I think we're saying at that point in time, we need to have the flexibility to go in and get the water for public health and safety. And that is talking about the carryover storage agreement. So we're sticking to carryover storage. We're not going over and talking about overproduction and how we deal with that from a replacement assessment. We're strictly talking about carryover water.
Well, understood, but the storage agreement would become applicable when you're over pumping your allotted amount, right? I mean, you would have to dive into that. I mean, you guys, a third of your water is water that you got from AVAC on the west side. So if you had to dip into that on the storage agreement for carryover water, you see what I'm saying? It's not always, and the situationally just seems a little different. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, again, these are scenarios that we want to make sure we're upfront, we're transparent and proactive and thinking that if it does happen and we get there,
Oh, they're
what do
great
we do?
scenarios.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rami.
Thanks.
And just note that the letter from the county to the general counsel of the WATERMASTER is part of the packet, beginning on page 292. Just so you're aware.
Thank you.
Any other?
Okay, any other public comment? Dennis.
Dennis Lamro with Palmdale Water District this time. Maybe spent too much time around Chair Paris, but I have an idea.
I love ideas, Dennis. I love ideas.
It seems to me like the majority of the carryover that's available to all parties is already available for use without a material injury analysis. All the current year rights plus the past 9 years of any unused. Would it be too simple for every year? That would be the limit of pumping that the party could do, or party could do all that's pumping within that total number that's available that year. And only if they went outside that would they have to do a material injury analysis. So let's say in a multi-year drought, you use up the current year and maybe years 1 through 5. The next year you have the current year rights and then some more, but it's not enough, but it's still within that old limit.
Within your
You
9
could,
years.
you pull the stored water within that limit and use it, or do a material engineering analysis just for that year and maybe the next year. So I'm just trying to think of ways to simplify this, and take into account that the majority of water, at least at this point in time, is available without material injury.
What about if you purchased carryover? So are you saying only carryover that you derive from your own supply,
Or,
excluding purchase carryover?
well, I considered that part of the annual rights. You know,
Okay.
your production rights, all the different forms, purchase, transferred water, all that's available to you without any additional material injury analysis. And then if you stayed within that total number, you would need to do a material injury analysis for the stored water until you have to call on it and it bumps you past that number.
So I love playing the devil's advocate, and that's a really good start. But now we're on the 3rd and 4th year of the drought. And in Palmdale Water District, you've run out of your 9 years of carryover, your production. Now you have to dip into your storage, and you come here for a material injury, and one member of this board says, screw you, don't pump. And then you're forced to go to court, and that's going to take you a year. And now you're in an emergency, and you, I guess, theoretically can't pump, right?
Now, of course we pump. I mean, you know, there's no choice but to serve our customers.
Now you're in violation of the agreement.
Not if you take into account that historical amount of pumping that's available to you.
But you've used it all in the first 3 years of the
Right.
drought.
But,
Now you're in your 4th year of the drought.
you know, so it needs some refinements because what you're saying, it's that number would shrink.
Yeah, now you don't have your 9 years.
Right.
You have your production right only. You might have another, because you get the production right every year. And now you've run out. You're in a public safety crisis. You've run out of water in Palmdale. And somebody on this board is saying, no, screw you. We want you to do a material injury, and we find that, you know, you have a problem and you can't pump.
Yeah, but our reassessment's every 17 years. If we got a 4 or 5 year drought, I mean, it wouldn't matter because you have a reassessment every 17 years, unless it fell perfectly.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah, so maybe
I'm looking at the very worst case scenario where, as a public water provider, you may
So
have
a refinement to that would be to look at your historical pumping, and that would be the guardrails or the bumpers
I see.
for the future. If you stay within that,
Within your historical.
within your
pumping.
historical
Okay, I
pumping,
like that.
regardless of what kind of rights, then
Well,
maybe there could be, that would be the material injury
yeah,
result when you go into these storage agreements, is you set that boundary. And then in the future, if you think you're gonna have to violate that, which you probably won't, then you would do it for the stored water.
but again, in the situation where, as Brandon said, there's a breach in the aqueduct,
Right,
no imported water is coming in.
right.
You use imported water, Court Sill uses imported water, LA County uses imported water. If that spigot is shut off, then you're going to go outside your historical pumping because you're not getting any of the imported water.
If you did historical usage.
Well, if you did historical usage, that would probably work.
Well,
Yeah, or some combination there. Seems like there's a way to carve an area with all the water that's currently available without material injury to kind of put this whole process more in perspective or
Yeah.
when it would really matter.
Okay. No,
That's all.
Great ideas, Dennis. I appreciate it. I was just being a devil's advocate on some of it. And
one of the other things too that I don't know how that would play in as well, but I think about AVAC's material and injury analysis that they did for the bench ranch a few years back. And part of that material injury analysis, which I quite honestly believe was the most comprehensive material injury analysis I've seen come from the water master at this point, you know, stated in there too, that if local or surrounding well water levels dropped below a certain point, they would figure out how to mitigate that. And if it resulted in pumping differentiation, they would do that as well. So I think that there's gotta be a way to address it. I can't put my finger on it.
Right, because it's hard to look in the future, you know, like Arden and Marine said, as to when you're gonna need this, but, anyway.
We just
Thank
have
you.
to be careful not to create a secondary, right?
Understood. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
How are you?
Brent Byrne, Quartz Water District.
Hi, Brent.
Just a comment on your scenario. If somebody does overpump though, which can happen anytime, you're subject to RWAs. So if he did pump outside of his guardrails due to a public emergency, he's subject to RWAs. He replaces that water. I mean, that's a simple solution there.
That goes back to Brandon's comment on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just have one question, maybe, I don't know if legal or the engineer. So a party has water in a carry over storage agreement. If I wanted to purchase that water and there's a transfer and that water's in a storage agreement, is it subject to material injury on the transfer? That's just my question.
One more time.
So a party wants to transfer water that's in a storage agreement to me. Is that subject to material injury?
So obviously, this is opinion.
Sure.
I don't, unless legal or engineer had a difference of it. I mean, obviously, I've done a lot of transfer.
Yeah.
So you have two choices. You transfer it for an investment purpose or to reserve purposes. But if you bought carryover water from me that I'm using out on the east side, you're buying it for the purposes of using it for Quartz Water District. Yes, because that's a material change in pumping location. That's what I would think.
Okay.
I think it also depends on one of the things that we need to decide as a board, and that is the timing
Sure.
of potential.
Because what if I'm purchasing it for investment purposes also, or for portfolio purposes? Sure.
And then I think at the time that you choose to pump it from a different extraction point, you gotta file for an extraction point.
Okay.
Or you wouldn't have to file for an extraction, but you have to put it in and I would kick
It, yeah, isn't that, and again,
Part of the process already?
I think that's part of the process already, because if we buy water for investment purposes or carryover water for investment purposes, I think, and Arden, can you clarify that we're required to do a material harm when we decide on the location of extraction?
Okay.
Arden, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We can only do the material injury analysis if we know the location, the volume, the time frame.
And take Brent's scenario, Quartz Water District buys stored carryover for use. So when they buy it, if they say, and our extraction point is going to be our wells here, here, and here, can you do the material injury at that point?
Only if Quartz Hill can say, this is the volume we'll extract, and this is when and for how long.
Okay, and that depends on the age of the carryover.
If it's in storage.
If that carryover water is still years 1 through 9, and I purchase it, it's on the table, open water.
According to
Once
where,
it's in the agreement,
according to where in the basin you get it, I would imagine.
okay.
But that's an Arden question. You know.
I mean, we've done it in practice. It's the practice has been as of this point, that if you're buying water, years 1 through 9 carryover water, you want to buy it for investment purposes, it's yours. Once that water hits 10 years, that's your responsibility to put it into a storage agreement, and it's stated use it or lose it is what I've read, unless legal contradicts me. Then, does that answer your question? I mean, I think that's what you were asking.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to use it and you purchase it, you're not purchasing it for investment purposes. Now you have to file your intended point of extraction and volume. If you buy 100 acre feet and you want to use it on 5 different wells, you'd have to show you want to pump 20 acre-foot per well on that given year and use that water. Or if it's one well over a 5 year period, it would be do a 20 acre-foot for the next 5 years. Let's say you get what I'm saying?
Yep. Okay.
And
Thank
that's
you.
been the practice that we've said, and I've been part of numerous times.
Yep.
Good. Good questions, Brent. Good comments.
We
Okay.
do have a question online.
Okay, and who is it? Do we know?
It's Gary Godey. Hold on.
We can hear you.
Read it here.
Mm.
So he says Palmdale Water District could go out to Exhibit 4 overliers and purchase their production rights in this situation. The water master should consider a method of using Exhibit 4 liquid water into the AVAC line as a backup in case the imported water aqueduct is breached.
Yeah. Okay, good statement.
West Central has a surplus of underground water, which would be put into chlorinization plant on 80th Street using the SNP line.
Okay. Thank you. Good comment. Any other public comment? Anybody else online? Holly, Patty, we're gonna move on to board comments.
That's fine.
We're good. Okay. Board, it's all yours. Why don't we do this in order? Would that be a better way to do it?
Well, should we go through one by one, the 1 through 7 and comment on them? So we have other board members.
Yeah.
I think that's nice. Let's tackle one and each one individually.
Hang on for 1 second.
You guys are okay with that?
I would be okay with that, but let me get organized for that real quick. Okay. Yeah, let's do one through 7. Let's go. I'll go landowner, public water provider, landowner, public water provider, and I will follow up at the end. So, Derek?
So we're tackling number 1.
I think we're gonna go through all 7. Was that your recommendation?
That's great.
Yep. Best as we can.
So, in all, I do support, the recommendation by council that there is a material injury report done. I do want to make sure that it frameworks the scope to local impacts only. Make sure that is not based on wide overdraft conjectures. So,
Eric, what do you mean?
that the material injury is really focused on the region it's impacted.
You mean like the sub area?
Yeah.
Oh,
Or whatever the recommendation, I kind of leave it up to the water master engineer to determine what local is and council. I'm not either council nor an engineer, but I think structurally, that's how I think about it. And I guess, the other part, just to be clear on that, it shouldn't, material injury report shouldn't be a process to impose a restriction, right, for carryover rights. I just want to make sure that I don't think that's implied or said, but want to make sure it's out there and heard.
First story.
Yes.
Okay. And then two,
I think I'd love to.
I'll go one at a,
That would be my
Yeah.
recommendation.
okay,
At least
we're
staff
good.
can follow along as well.
Okay, good.
Me, right? You're going to me?
Yeah, I'll go to you. Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. So kind of like what he says, so a material injury analysis, when it will be required, is just, then we will simply state under what circumstances, and I think that's kind of what we're discussing now. What circumstances really constitutes that? So I kind of like what Dennis said, you could even put in all the rights you're able to use up to what time, put all that information in there, and then after that time, the main thing is to make it fair for everybody. Cause I want everyone to be able to use their water, and obviously emergencies are gonna be different for public water suppliers than they are for a landowner or someone that needs that. So it is important that we might have to have it in sub areas, you know, something depending on the subsidence or the problems in the different areas.
Okay.
So as long as we put that information in there, I think we'll be good.
Good comment. And Craig and Cameron, are you following? Are you getting?
Yes.
Are different? Brandon,
When I read through the judgment, I understand what Romney was saying earlier, that it does not clearly state verbatim that, you know, the injury analysis is required, but it does say that you have to ensure that you're not causing harm to your neighbors and other well producers. I don't know how you accomplish that without having material injury analysis. Therefore, I am in support of council's recommendation and the water master's recommendation of doing a material injury analysis, because even though it doesn't use those words, I believe it is called for. The structure of it is gotta be a little bit further discussed. I understand what Derek was saying, that he doesn't want it to be punitive or restrictive, I guess would be the better word on it, but that's also the purpose of a material injury analysis, is to monitor the use of the water in the basin. So I'm not sure how we overcome that issue. I just don't know the answer to that, but it's something that's gotta be discussed.
okay, good. Carolina?
You. I'll make sure everybody can hear me. So, you know, my feelings on the necessity of material injury is consistent with the letter from LA County Waterworks Districts, and yeah, and also you know, the statements made by Rami today. That being said, I also agree with Brandon, and I struggle with, you know, how we move forward to protect the basin. And so in thinking of that, and moving forward with that, I recognize the difficulty that the water master engineer would have to be able to share with this board what is necessary in terms of our actions to be able to make a determination about the safety. That being said, I think it's important that material injury analyses be based on local impacts and current levels of groundwater, because again, and I stress current because again, we also in the letter by District 40, I think it bears repeating that the ability to extract carryover water under storage agreement is essential to incentivize parties to keep as much groundwater in the basin as possible. And that is what's been done since the judgment was put in place. And the water master should not create unnecessary obstacles to the extraction of stored carryover water that everybody, not just public water suppliers, but everybody. So that being said, I think that it's important that we look at those things, and if material injury analysis is going to be conducted, that it only be look at local impacts and the current levels of groundwater, and even more so at the point of application.
Point of application?
For the storage agreement?
Storage, okay. So on one, just listening to everybody, I'm pretty much in agreement. I think a material injury analysis is necessary at some point for the stored water, and the question is when. And I think we have to, when we write it up, we have to carve out emergencies that can happen, so we're not in the position of telling Palmdale Water District, you know, shut off your pumps and let your people run out of water. I don't know how we do that. Well, I do know how we do that. And I think Brandon stated it real well. You're going to pump, and if you pump too much, you will work it out at the end of the year. But if at some point we find that in our job, and the court gives us this job, is to protect the basin, we can't just say pump, 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 regardless, especially if we start causing subsidence, if we have causing real material harm to this basin, we gotta make sure we don't do that. So I guess that's the balance always. Yes, material injury. Yes, it should be localized. We shouldn't be looking at the stored carryover as a way to balance our entire basin issues. It should be focusing on local impacts. And I think we kind of have consensus on that.
I did have one other question, and it was brought up to me, is our reassessment for the basement is every 17 years. So I believe our assessment comes up in 2031. So when you have the carryover storage agreement, if the material injury analysis is done at the beginning, and I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. If you come in and you say, okay, I've got X amount of water, you know, you could theoretically come in and say, all right, I want to use this over 20, 30, 40 years. Well, you don't know what the basin's going to look like. We are having to risk reassessment on levels every 17 years as well. If there was material injury analysis done at the beginning, would there be any wisdom to capping the length of that material injury analysis to coincide with the 17-year mark of the permanent rights? And I don't know how I feel about that. It's just a question that was asked that I wanted to kind of throw out there.
So basically you're saying whatever we put in writing, that we would almost have to say, excluding if it's time for our 17th year evaluation, that may change.
Or maybe subject to a new material injury analysis.
Right.
I don't even know if we can do that in the judgment.
Right.
I mean, that's just, there was a question that was posed that I felt was worth repeating and throwing out there for discussion.
Well, that's the complexity of this whole issue anyway, because there are all these different scenarios and things we're trying to figure it out is why we're here today.
Okay, I'm gonna move us along. On one, I think we have some consensus. I think we're all in consensus. A material injury would happen at some point. Do we have that consensus?
Yeah.
And it would not take into account basin-wide overdraft issues. It would be localized to the area where the carryover, the stored carryover would be used. And if it's going to be used where our production rights are, then that's going to kind of impact what material injury analysis we're going to do. Questions of our consensus?
What I envision happening is to take the comments from today, the issues that there's agreement on, and list those out, and then revise the template accordingly
According to the
for
consensus that
further
we've reached.
discussion.
And then obviously we're going to have to refine it a little bit. This is a good process and we're moving along. 2, how should the engineer conduct any material injury analysis? I will start reverse this time. Kathy, I'll start with you. And then I'll go to Derek, then I'll go to Carolina, and then I'll go to Brandon.
So I definitely, think that we've already discussed, you know, doing it for the local impact.
Right.
Consistent with the material analysis for other application and not to include the overdraft considerations. But also we already have discussed and we see it all ties into, you know, protecting the basin. If there's any sub area that there's issues or problems, that we're gonna look to the engineer's best decisions on and telling us what areas are more susceptible to others. And so they are gonna do the material engineering analysis. And probably the problem with saying that though is you wanna be fair to everybody and it's not their problem if their water is in an area that there's a problem. So we have to find a way to let them be able to use their water, so.
Derek?
All right, this gets a little more technical, so I'm gonna read it. So, I mean, just to continue to lean into my local, approach, I just make sure that any attempt to introduce basin-wide overdraft considerations should not be through the, storage agreement, chilling injury process. If there are concerns, or to the extent they must be addressed separately through the judgment, specifically overdraft provisions, which are paragraph 18.5.9 and paragraph 18.5.10, not through the storage agreement.
Okay. Caroline?
I think I might have leaned into this a little bit in my response to the last question. And that is that I think it should be local impact. So I'm in concurrence with what's written here by council. And I agree with Mr. Jurasik that it should be, we should not include overdraft considerations. And yeah.
Great. Brandon?
As Caroline said, I leaned into it on the first one. I got that for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've covered that in the first conversation, but should be local impact. Shouldn't be looking at overall overdraft at all. And so when should it occur? And we discussed this somewhat. So when I do a storage agreement for my carryover, if when I apply for the storage agreement, I say this water will be used in the current point of extraction for my production rights, I think that's enough at that point. If we get into these emergency situations and we're extracting everything, at some point, we have to take a look at, are we causing any harm to the basin, not in the middle of the emergency? And I don't know how we ferret that out, but go ahead.
I agree with that.
Oh. Chair Paris, if I may, this wasn't included in the slideshow, but it relates to these issues as well as issue number 7 to the extent it might help allay some of the concerns voiced by the public water suppliers. It was suggested that in terms of how the material injury analysis is conducted, there's the concept of mitigation, which was discussed at the last board meeting during the engineer's presentation on material injury analyses in general. And the suggestion was for parties that preemptively purchase imported water prior to there being drought conditions in excess of what they would have typically purchased in order to replenish the basin, that consideration be given to that purchase of imported water as potentially being mitigation when the engineer conducts their material injury analysis. that suggestion was brought up in the context of figuring out ways to address the seventh question, just how to deal with extraction if there's an emergency that comes up. That's my best way of articulating that concept, and Arden and Maureen might be able to weigh in a little bit further, but something for the board to consider in relation to how the material injury analysis is conducted for these storage agreements, and also potentially helping put to rest some concerns with respect to the seventh question. I hope I articulated that concept in a way that's understandable.
Not really, but I'd love to hear more.
The suggestion was,
Maybe
yeah,
the engineer
sure.
can elaborate more on.
Arden, did you hear that, and can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think that's just recognizing that when parties do use imported water, right, the water levels in response will be higher. And so when we do our material injury analyses, you know, we're trying to capture current conditions to the best of our ability. And so, you know, if parties are preemptively using a lot of imported water, when we do the material injury analysis, the water levels will be higher.
So Palmdale Water District, for example, in a normal year, Dennis will know this, but you use so much of your aqueduct water, the imported water, and you pump so much, right? And the fact that you're using imported water means your water levels are higher. You're not pumping as much, but in an emergency, aqueduct goes down. Now you start pumping more, but you build up your levels because you've been using imported water. Is that kind of what you're looking at, Arden?
That's correct. Yeah. Now the parties do have more carryover water because they've received the imported water return flows, right?
Right.
But we do recognize that, you know, the use of imported water benefits the basin, and do just want to note that, you know, our use of current water level conditions, prioritizing those when we do the material injury analyses, are taking into account the benefits of the imported water in the basin.
So,
Okay.
Arden, does that statement mean that it would be duplicative in your mind? I want to understand what that would actually mean. Like, are you talking some percentage calculation, or?
I can jump in here. It's not a one-to-one direct consideration where, you know, you get additional imported water, you'll get some credit. It's really the impact of the water levels. For example, if you're looking at subsidence, what is generally done with subsidence is that there's a higher risk when you drop below the historical lows of water levels in a given well. If water levels have been increasing over the last few years, there's more buffer to protect the basin from subsidence in that particular area. And so it would be a very individual basis based on the party, how much imported water they're bringing in, what water levels look like, what the risk of subsidence, all of this will be taken into consideration. But we do see the impact of imported water raising water levels and providing more protection for the basin.
So when you're thinking of buffers, that's where I see you have buffers. But if a lot of people, let's just say, like in Dennis's scenario, we all said, yay, we have all this amount of water we could use up to, you know, like 9 years worth of water, and we were all taking that out, that obviously would affect the buffer as well as other issues.
Absolutely, and that's what Art's saying. The reason why we have a buffer is people haven't been pumping, which means there's more carryover water that could potentially be taken out of the basin. So that's why it's not a one-to-one, it's a consideration. It depends on other users nearby, how much water they have, what their plans are to produce the water. It's going to be a very local consideration, but you're absolutely right. That is, it all goes together. Additional carryover means that water hasn't been pumped, but it means that water could be pumped at a later date.
Okay, so let me try to wrap up this.
Excuse me, Bob. We have another comment by Gary Godey.
Okay, Gary, do you wanna?
I'll have to read it for you.
Okay, read it.
Okay, he says, this is from Gary Godey. If it is an emergency, the groundwater pumpers will simply pump anyway and be subject to replacement water assessments and simply pay those assessments. Without a way to physically force them to shut down their pumping, everything being discussed today is simply hypothetical.
Got it. Justin?
Hi, good morning.
And Justin's the new assistant manager for AVAC. Hi,
New
Justin.
Assistant General Manager for AVAC. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to ask a quick question. Kind of new to the process, trying to catch up a little bit, but going back to sort of related to the comment that was just read and the discussion between Dennis and Director Calandri. So if in an emergency scenario, a party overpumps more than either their 9 years of carryover that they've got and their current year production, right? They would be subject to replacement water assessments. Is that correct? Or some replacement water obligation?
Well,
So
yeah.
currently, can they, as I understand it, they can transfer from another party some carryover right to satisfy that obligation?
Yes,
I think that's correct. So under a scenario where that carryover water has been stored, can they transfer carryover water that's in a storage agreement to satisfy that replacement water obligation just the same, or would that then be required to do material injury?
That's what I was, that we don't have clarity on that, but that's what I was implying. That was the question I had thrown out.
Okay. Yeah, probably something to think about, I guess,
Because
right?
I think and I'm not speaking for all this, I would say that storage water is transferable. It's just carryover water that's in a storage agreement, so it's no different.
Yeah.
And we have plenty of cases where we have transferred carryover water to meet a replacement water assessment need. It's just paying for it in a different way, because ultimately, what are you doing with the RWAs? You're buying canal water and putting it back into the system. You're recharging the system. What's the difference if you move it around with carryover water or canal water?
Yeah, or we have a situation where we have extra carryover water in the basin because of the imported water that's been supplied and that hasn't been used. So I don't know, just kind of ties in with the few comments that we just had.
And I would
repeat that.
Sorry,
I want to make sure I heard you. So can you repeat that, Justin? AVEC, when you say you're saying, what was your statement? AVEC has carryover water?
I was just speaking in general. So
Okay.
Just that
I
last
just
part.
wanted to make sure I knew what you meant by we.
Oh yeah. Well, you're talking about that last comment that I just made.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was hearing Maureen discuss the fact that because imported water has been supplied to the basin, there's a nexus there, a tie to carryover water that exists from whichever parties there may be. So, yeah.
And the way I want to make sure I have clarity on it as well, is I will use the bench ranch as an example. You guys had a mitigation program that you submitted with your material injury analysis. And that mitigation assessment that was done by the engineer was, hey, if we are pumping and water levels decline, we'll stop pumping or we'll fix the problem. I believe what Arden is trying to say, and Arden, correct me if I'm wrong, is mitigation is something that is taken into account on a material injury analysis. Part of that possible mitigation for the water suppliers, because the water suppliers are the one that are using imported water and not using their full production, right? The landowners are really, just not pumping as much. So there's kind of a difference there. So it's just part of the mitigation. Landowners have ways they could mitigate, but I think that's what she's referring to.
Okay.
That's the way I took it. Arden, is that correct?
I think that I was thinking more of the imported water as, ways that ahead of time that parties can proactively increase water levels within their area.
Okay, Thank you,
you.
Justin. Appreciate the comments. We're still on two, right? So let's try to wrap this up.
I'm sorry, Rob. I have another comment from Gary.
Okay,
Exhibit 4 overlier stipulated to being able to transfer water. That transferred water is available to be applied to RWAs in lieu of imported water. The other parties agreed to the stipulation.
but I think the only thing I would say is anytime you transfer water to make up your water that you've overpumped, there is a material injury at that point. That isn't, we transfer. If
As
it-
far as I know, and how it's always been, is that if a party wishes to do a transfer to satisfy a replacement water obligation, that transfer application does not require a material injury analysis, and the fee is much smaller and shows that.
Okay, thank you for the
You're welcome.
clarification. That's a good thing. Okay. So number 2, local impact. Again, we've discussed it all.
Mhm.
I think you have it, right? We're on 3. At what point any material injury analysis occurs? We're going through that?
No.
Okay. Then, Eric, I'll start with you.
Okay.
I want to keep you on the,
Yeah, you did. Okay, I thought it was lastest. So I do support, as council's recommended, upfront, material injury report. And the reason I think this provides certainty to landowners about their ability to use their stored carryover. I am opposed to any framework that defers material injury to the time of extraction, as that creates uncertainty and potential for extraction to be blocked when the landowners need the water the most. I do have another point, and I've been struggling trying to frame it. So I'll just say it, and if it doesn't make sense, I'll try to clarify. Another concern is timing, right? Is the first person that pulls material impact, and I asked that maybe the engineering council may not be as significant as the 4th, but the 5th person that pulls that carryover. Because the cumulative impact is there. And what you don't want is a run for the pump. And I don't know how to solve that. And I don't know how to structure that. I just am very concerned that that could be happening, potentially.
Good comment.
I kind of agree with him, and that's kind of like what I was saying, like the problem and issues of cumulative impact because of when someone takes it. So that was kind of my concern also.
Okay, Brandon? We're at what point should any material analysis of,
It's,
I know, this is a lot for.
I'm struggling with this one. I just am. I mean, it's, you go through, and if you say you do it on the front end, I can see the wisdom on doing it on the front end out of the gate. But then also, you're there to ensure the basic health and issues going forward. We don't know what the future holds. Maybe that's just that, hey, you were late, you're just out of luck. I don't know the answer to it. So I can see wisdom on the front end. I can also see wisdom on as needed as well. But I also think maybe there's a medium there that if it's the material injury analysis has a time cap on it, maybe that's a solution, to where I don't know. But there's issues there.
your time cap at the 17 years?
Whether or not it's a 17 years, 5 years, 10 years, if there's a time limit, maybe that's a way to mitigate any issues down the road in the future. I mean, you're talking about having 9 years or 10 years of accrued water that's free to use before you have to go into a storage agreement. Then if you have it for another 10 years, you're talking about a 20-year supply of like uninterruptible water. question is, where does that land? And I don't have an answer for that, but it's something to think about and discuss as you guys go back and draft your next proposal.
Carolina?
Thank you, Rob. I'll try to be simple and then I'll try to, because I think Brandon brought up some good points. So regarding timing, I think we've already mentioned that I think it should happen when the agreement is executed and or if there's another source, right? So we talked about that difference, existing infrastructure versus a new point of extraction, right? I absolutely do not concur with the engineer's recommendation for, you know, it has to be within 2 years, if that is in fact was what the recommendation was.
Within 2 years of what, I'm sorry?
Of extraction, that we'd have to look at it again. One of the points that the engineer made was that in order to do an analysis, you know, they need to know timing and volume and, you know, point of extraction. The timing is what I take issue with, and I do not believe it's appropriate to have them redone, you know, within 2 years of extraction. And I think their point was either or, but my point is it should happen up front, so there shouldn't be an or in terms of doing it more closely. And I think when we're considering kind of the points that both Brandon and Derek made, is that again, we need to ensure that carryover water doesn't become punitive to those that took the initiative to allow for the basin to recover. And that's not the intent of this board, is to be punitive. We do have the responsibility, however, of managing the basin, but this isn't the area that we should be doing so. Because again, that would be punitive and not the intent of what carryover water was about.
Okay. I agree, the material injury should be done up front. If, and I think Carolina said it, if you put in more wells at a different place and you're going to use the water at a different place, then that should be looked at for material injury. But if you're going to use the water where your production rights are and where you've been using it forever, then the material injury is done and you're able to pump. I kind of like Brandon's idea of at the 17-year mark to kind of reevaluate everything. I don't know what the other members feel, or is that what you?
Yeah, it was just, I think 2 years is too quick.
Yeah.
It just is. Yeah.
Well,
And I think the 17-year mark's an idea. It sounds good, unless there's another idea.
I think that's as good as we get, because at the 17-year mark, we got to reevaluate everything anyway. And we should evaluate the stored carryover at that point, not say that we take it away, we never take it away, but just reevaluate the material harm issues at that point. If we can't get consensus on that, I'm not strongly tied to it.
Yeah, I would have to really think about that a lot more.
Yeah, I'm not tied to it. It's just.
Yeah, because even in the, just to my point was that even in the analysis that really the 17-year analysis shouldn't be applied retroactively, right? We need to look at what the end condition is at the point. And again, we're talking about looking and considering what local levels or what current levels are when we're looking at carryover water. So I think just to make sure I understand, you're not suggesting a reconsider everything at the 17-year mark, but more, so maybe I should restate that. Are you suggesting that these agreements are in place but expire in 7 years?
I wouldn't say expire, but I would say at 17 years, we're going to reevaluate everything. So if we find in the Central Basin that we have severe overdraft at certain areas, we got reconsidered. And if we've already said, you know, you have 1,000 acre feet of stored carryover, maybe we have to talk about if we have subsidence in a certain area, redistributing that in some way. And I know I'm throwing wrenches in the works. I'm not tied to that, but I think we're going to probably do that anyway.
And what I was stating was just an effort to try and address decades down the road.
Right.
Versus it was an idea. And to be honest with you too, I mean, another thought on it too, and a counter argument is in a reevaluation at the 17-year mark, you cannot take away somebody's carryover rights by judgment. It's only permanent rights.
Yeah, no, I get
So,
it. Yeah, Stan did a
how
good,
it works. It was
yeah,
just
Stan
something that-
did a good job going through that. I just, and I'm not tied to that. It was just.
So I guess what I'm hearing, Rob, is that it doesn't necessarily have a bearing on this agreement in terms of how the agreement's written up, or are you suggesting we write something about that?
I just want to get consensus. So if that's going to, that's not critical for me. It just means that, yeah, that's not critical.
That we should continue to consider it as we move forward as a board.
We're going to have to, because at the 17-year mark, if Arden comes in and says severe overdraft, this area, you know, we're not going to impact everybody's production rights, but we got to figure this out.
Right.
An area we're going to look at is stored carryover, not say you lose it, but if we've already given you the right to basically up front on the material injury said, you know, you're free to use this whenever you want, that's probably going to have to be reconsidered, not taken away, just figure out where the pumping's taking place that's causing the overdraft. Again, like Gary Cody says, we're coming up with all kinds of hypotheticals. Probably don't need to, probably just keep it simple.
Okay.
Right. I hear what he's saying, but I think it is part of our job to try to look at the, not just simple things.
Yeah,
So-
well, we will look at the long-term impacts. And we are coming up with lots of
Right.
hypotheticals.
Yeah, and I'm not stuck like on the
So-
teeny thing.
Are we still on 3? Okay. At what point should material injury analysis occur? I think we have consensus. It should occur upfront, looking at where our production rights are and what wells we're using for the material injury. And if we bring in other carryover, or if we buy stored carryover and want to use it at locations it wasn't approved for, then a material injury takes place again. Yes?
So the only thing I would add in is the key issue from the advisory was adding rights to the storage agreement as part of the annual report without consideration of a material injury analysis. A follow-up MIA would then be required before it could be extracted if it exceeded the original MIA.
Material injury. I don't know what that, yeah. Cameron?
I think that was in reference to key issue number 4, which is the concept of rolling in aging carryover into an existing storage agreement. If I may, not to belabor the point, but just to make sure we have the right direction to come back with the storage agreement that's acceptable based on your consensus. I think it's pretty clear that the direction is material injury analysis occurs at the time the application is made, so long as the location, amount, and rate is available to conduct that
Same
analysis.
location, you're
If it's
pumping out of your same wells, you have your production right.
right. If it's submitted for investment purposes, then of course that would be delayed until an extraction point was
You would have to
identified.
have a new material injury at point of extraction is the way it is now.
If you could go back to the one slide, so those are articulated in the second part of that paragraph in 1 and 2. I just want to call your attention to number 3. If that a material injury analysis would be required if the engineer determines that the local groundwater levels have changed since the application was approved, such that there's a risk of material injury analysis. That's new. And it would be helpful for the board to consider that. That was an engineer recommendation, whether we should keep that or eliminate that.
This is Maureen. I just wanted to jump in that this is meant to be like a stopgap in case we are seeing active subsidence in an area of the basin or something has considerably changed, not meant to revoke rights in any way, but just a reconsideration if there is material injury being observed, a mechanism to consider what is causing that.
Board?
I think this is still my concern about that it will still do that, even if that's not the intent.
Say that again, Charlene.
So I understand what Maureen's saying about what the intent is not to do that, but I think it's not defined enough that we'd be able to understand. And one of the things I heard from Derek and others was that we want certainty at the time that we enter into an agreement. We don't want some caveat to come into play sometime later.
Yeah, and I don't know the engineer's intent is kind of maybe my second comment I made in regards to a run for the pump or, you know, how that impacts timing of extraction to make sure it doesn't impact other extractors in regards to this. So I'm not sure, but yeah, it's water, it's ours. I want to be able to use it and I want to understand what the material injury impact at the timing of creating this, so.
When we're looking at
If
extraction,
I could just add just a second.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
It says here the proposed volume, time period, and rate of recovery. So I think we've all determined that the time period is the part that we're stuck on. And so I don't feel comfortable with this as it's written.
What would you feel comfortable with?
Well, because then it goes on to say, if this information is not available, if we took off time period, then it's consistent with what we talked about, right? Volume, we talked about, you need to know volume, you need to know, or range of volume at least, rate of recovery. So the time period, I think, is what is, I'm hearing the engineer say that that's one of the things that they're concerned about is that there's a condition change. Is that accurate?
for a time period, we're just looking to see, are you planning on pumping it now, in 10 years?
And also for the rate of production, if you're saying, you know, with the stored water, you know, when we use this, we'll be pumping, you know, X amount of water acre feet per year. Well, how many years will that be for?
And I think this encroaches also on this whole emergency issue. So this statement also crosses over into what that impact would be in case of emergency. So, yeah, I don't think basically, if you're asking me what would need to change, like everything that starts with if, which I think is the whole point of this statement.
Rob?
Yeah.
We have another comment from Gary.
Go ahead, read it, please.
Subareas with a surplus of groundwater should be used to pump liquid water into the piping system of the valley to transfer the liquid water to subareas in subsidence. This would be a good long-term plan for moving underground water in the valley.
Good comment. And just to respond to Gary very quickly, I think as our infrastructure, AVEX infrastructure, LA County's infrastructure, I think we're all looking at those issues, how to move water from different sub areas and supplement, but that's not part of, unfortunately, not part of this discussion right now, but it's something I think we're all trying to do. Okay, consensus, let's build it. At what point material injury occurs, I think it's upfront. It's for where we're taking our production rights from. If we buy water, either stored carryover or carryover water, then a material injury would be done on that water, just like it is required now. And I think that's the consensus we have right now. And I think going out further years if at year 17, that's why I thought, year 17 was a good time to reevaluate, but it's not something I want to put in if we can't get consensus. But at year 17, when we reevaluate the entire basin, we're going, hopefully, basin's doing great, no overdraft, we don't have any issues, we go forward. But if we start finding we have severe overdraft in some areas, and we get that in the annual report anyway, so far we don't. But if we do, then we're going to have to make changes anyway. So why gum up the works right now? Let's wait until that happens. Keep it simple. I think we have consensus.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have it?
Thank you.
Number 4, what should be the process for adding carryover to an existing storage agreement? I'll be a democracy in action. Who wants to start with that question?
Okay, yes, I'll do it.
Okay.
You brought up the key issue for number 4 for the advisor.
What should be the process? I mean, it's get a form, fill it out, what you have, and let us know, and it's done. I mean, it's as simple as it gets. There is nothing in the judgment that precludes our ability to stop somebody from entering into a storage agreement, as I understand it. So, I mean, it's just as simple as that,
So
in my mind.
you have your storage agreement,
Mhm.
and in the next year, you have 100 acre feet that needs to go into that storage agreement. You do the reporting to the WATERMASTER engineer, that 100 feet goes in. Is there another material injury requirement for that?
Yes, because it's an increase in your storage agreement, right?
That's the question.
That's not what it says. I know that we're moving on, but I just want to be clear that regarding number 4, as it was written by council, I'm in agreement. What it says here, just to give council direction. So yeah, what we have up on screen,
Agreeable with that as
agree
well.
with what's on screen.
You've lost democracy here, and now it's ejection. So I'll
Go
go.
ahead, Dick.
So I do as well support council's recommendation, and kind of just some verbiage to that is, I support automatic annual additions without reapplication. Requiring a new application each year would be burdensome and inconsistent with how banking or imported waters operate. The automatic approach respects the landowners having existing production rights. They should not face administrative friction in maintaining them.
Okay, so we're all in agreement with 4?
Yes.
The way it's written?
Yeah, that's
All right. And then
Yay.
on number
5, show 5 on the, you have a 5 there? What fee should be imposed and when?
I agree as analysis occurs. The language on here.
Well, the material injury analysis is automatic. We have that outlined. We have some administrative costs that will occur with this. Are we required to cover administrative fees based off of rough estimates? I mean, I don't think it's gonna be much. Would you ever put on that?
Just thinking about it, and if we just follow suit like we do with the other applications, there is a minimal administrative cost tied to those. And for the storage agreements that would require a material injury analysis, I would think that Arden would give her cost, and then staff would have their minimal cost just for processing. So if there were no no material injury analysis, say for investment only, it would most likely just be the administrative cost.
In the question that I would have on top of that, there's accounting that has to be done with that every year report.
Right.
Just want to make sure we cover our costs.
Yeah, staff and the water master engineer will work together to make sure we cover all costs when that time comes.
I think we have consensus that all costs should be recovered.
Yeah,
Yes.
and maybe just to have it more clear of how I think about it, so it's not a bit ambiguous on what those are. I just think they need to be reasonable and proportionate, right? And, you know, in under the judgment, it says uniformly applicable, right? So I would say, meaning that the storage agreement should not be subject to higher fees or more burdensome process than imported water banking. So just to put it.
Actually, we're hoping for a lot less than what we have.
That's great, but
Yeah.
make sure, I you know, as a
Our
feeling.
our fees,
It's like a $15,000 deposit for banked water, so we don't want that.
we don't want that.
I just don't want it more.
It should be fairly straightforward and not costly to do this. So are we all in agreement with 5, or do we want any changes on 5 that's on the screen in front of us?
I'm good, so long as all costs are covered.
Okay,
No, I'm
Everybody
good.
good?
It's all
Agreed.
covered.
okay, good. 6, put 6 up. Who wants to go first?
There we go. Okay, fine. So, and his council has dropped this. And so I'm acknowledging that they did drop this, because and I don't think it should be reintroduced, you know. Any attempt to, structure that is use it or lose it framework is just not acceptable to landowners. And, our need to pump, during those years. So, and I think it's contrary to the judgment, paragraph 20.8.
Okay, drop it.
I agree to drop.
I agree too. That's fast. Number 7. What considerations should be incorporated into carryover storage agreements for the public water supplier emergency use needs? And do we have a 7? Let's see. Yes. Well, let the public water providers start on this.
You want to start?
No.
Well,
Kathy.
I definitely, we definitely have to make sure it's outlined what we can do in an emergency, because we are gonna have to respond in an emergency because we have public health to consider. So I don't know necessarily if you need 2 different ones.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that you need 2 different. That's the start of the conversation.
Brandon?
Uniformly applicable rules. Just same for one is same for all. So I that doesn't mean I'm not sympathetic to him, but we have to just stay the same across the board. So let's figure out how to do it.
Jared?
Yeah, I just, go back to, I am sensitive. I understand. I'm not the one that wants to say, public, you do not have water, but the judgment in the 4 corners of the judgment is very explicit that there's no tiering that's uniformly applied. And, a suggestion of some ideas out there, I'm not sure it's the water master's responsibility to figure out how to serve the public. I think it's the public agency's process to that. And if it's within the judgment that they have to build around, I'd encourage them to find solutions outside of this judgment that allows that to happen. I don't have a solution.
Carolina?
Maybe that was a good time for every time. So, I think they should be uniform. And it's clear in the judgment too. But I also think the emergency exemption can be uniform. So then I do think it's incumbent upon us to determine what the emergency is in that definition.
process is what I stated earlier to Ronnie. I believe the judgment allows for those emergency provisions.
With the replacement.
I would love to hear legal side of it as well. I understand that you have a multi-year drought situation, but again, if you got a 5-year drought, it really doesn't matter on your pumping because you can't reassess the yield but every 17 years. Now, if it fell in that little window right there, you could have a potential problem. I'll acknowledge that. But this was something that was discussed at length through the court hearings and everything, because there's emergency situations that happen in agriculture, there's emergency in public. You guys provide drinking water to the public, we provide food to the public. So, I think there's already something there, but that's my thoughts.
The only thing I would point out to that is it's difficult to mitigate. There is a difference between not providing water to the public, health and safety, versus a crop. There is a financial number that can be placed on that can be mitigated from a financial perspective. I'm not advocating, I'm just, since you pointed that out, I want to make sure that there's an acknowledgement that water is necessary for health and safety. And cannot be mitigated in the same way the loss of, say, a crop can be mitigated.
So maybe just in regards to the financial planning, I just say that the public agencies have the ability to do their own capital planning and, working through, potentially the state water project program to ensure that they have that water and not waiting for it. So, bank more, buy more water, develop more infrastructure, find things that protect the basin versus trying to make an emergency run on the basin.
In discussing, I'll just try to wrap it up and see if I make it worse or make it better.
So carryover water's been the only thing I wanted to.
Yeah, well, I that's kind of direction I'm going. It seems like we've already resolved this. If we do the material injury up front and the public water providers have the right to pump their production right, 9 years of carryover, and then go into their stored water, we've already kind of have resolved this issue. So if there's a public health and safety needs, public water providers are going to pump. Dennis said it. Dennis, come up here and tell us what you said.
Before Dennis talks, I do want to say something. As number 7 reads, what consideration should be incorporated in carryover storage agreements for public water supplier and emergency? Question is none.
We already
the answer is that's the answer to number 7.
We've already had it.
Yeah, but the answer is none.
Dennis, please. What are your thoughts?
Pump. Yeah, no, we will do what we need to do. I mean, and as Derek says, all of us have different plans and contingencies to have redundant supplies, additional supplies, controversial projects to provide supplies.
Yeah, very controversial.
And another reason for those controversial supplies.
So, yeah, I think we've already resolved this. We're all in agreement that the rules need to be uniformly applicable, right? We're all in agreement with that. We're in agreement that we're going to do the material injury up front. And I don't know, do we need to write anything? What Dennis said is what's going to happen. They're not going to let the public run out of water. If we have to reevaluate a material injury after that happens and how to mitigate it, that's going to be a requirement of this board. But I mean, you know, AVAC and I believe all the public water providers, but AVAC's one of their primary mission statements is we're going to protect this basin. We're not going to allow for things that are happening in the Central Valley to happen here. And we're working every day on that. I mean, we're putting in thousands of acre feet of water every year into the basin. We are working on our infrastructure so we can move our water around that's stored. So I don't think, I think as much as we need 7, we just all agree that all the rules should be uniformly applicable. And we're already there. We don't have to go into different rules to meet public safety needs because that issue should never have to arise. We're going to use all the water available to us. If we get to a point where there is some material injuries, we're going to address it then, and then go from there, I think.
I think we have our mutual aid where we all agree, the public water suppliers have our mutual aid too. And so in an emergency, I don't think everybody will just do whatever and try to figure it out afterwards. I'm sure we would all get together and figure out something so we wouldn't harm the basin while we were taking care of the public.
And, you know, and the point that we've all made is at 17 years, if any of us have done anything to harm the basin and we're having severe overdraft, we're all looking at losing potential production rights or something else is going to happen. So why would we want to do that? I think we're creating a problem we don't need to create with number 7. And I think we're all in agreement with paragraph 18.514 of the judgment requires uniformly applicable rules for storage agreement. Period. Agreed?
Agreed.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that,
Devil's in the detail, but I do agree.
okay.
Yeah. I think
We have consensus. You
What
wanna-
I'd suggest is
Yes.
that we come back with a redlined template. And that's the product that needs to come out of this exercise.
Yeah, well, I think we've given you
Yeah,
Enough to
yeah,
a lot of direction.
right.
And now it's 11:05 and Angel told me we have to get on with our business because we cannot stop this meeting till we cover everything. Right, Angel?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
She was afraid I'd let this conversation go on too long.
Jim Harris, may I recommend in the interest of time that I don't know how many other board members feel, table the administrative assessment reserve policy till the next meeting?
It's gonna be a pretty quick.
Yeah, it's gonna be really quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
You already reviewed it last month,
yeah,
so nothing's changed.
we're pretty much done with that. Now if I can,
My God.
where's my agenda? Do you have enough direction now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good conversations, everyone.
Chair Pierce, can I ask Angela to sit in for me for a minute? So I won't disrupt the flow.
Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Why don't we
Great.
take a 5-minute break, everybody? Restroom break.
Okay.
I know.
Meeting,
You're always.
I'm calling the meeting back to order. And we're on item 8. Consideration of possible action on resolution R 2602. Establishing an administrative assessment reserve policy. Our administrator, Angel.
Thank you, Rob. Holly, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, up on the screen is the draft reserve policy that was presented to the advisory committee and the board at last month's meeting. The advisory did ask that we provide more information in a memo form, and we have done that. And the memo is on page 35 of your agenda packet. On this page, nothing's changed, but I did want to just point out the advisory committee did have a comment on legal versus the enforcement, and they were afraid that maybe double dipping there. Staff believes that number 3, legal, will cover unexpected litigation, whereas enforcement would be for enforcement issues such as what we talked about this morning. So Holly, next slide, please. Just a few key points for this reserve policy. As of December 31st, we did have $630,000 in our administrative assessment reserve balance. And based on our current budget and the increase to the stabilization fund, staff does feel we can reach this target by 2027. The advisory committee also had a comment on that. Thought we should push that out to 2028. I just want to let everybody know that that's just a target year and it's not tied to the resolution or the reserve policy. And then after adopting this, oh, I'm sorry.
Just quick clarification, because I listened to the advisory committee too. We're just estimating 2027, we will have our entire reserve.
That is correct.
If we go into 2028, we go into 28.
Or 2029.
29, yeah.
That is correct. And then after the board adopts this reserve policy, the board will periodically review this policy and can change it at any time. And with that, staff and the advisory committee recommend approval and happy to answer any questions.
Super. Any questions?
Just a comment. So, you know, as this reserve grows to $1 million, you think the question I want to put out there, and I know it's always a question of the landowners, is evaluating, continue to put on staff's radar administrative assessment reduction.
Sorry, I missed that bullet point there, but the reserve policy actually gives the board the opportunity to evaluate that administrative assessment. So once we reach that target, we can look at the administrative assessment and possibly lower it at that time.
Thank you.
Good presentation. So we're on item B, resolution R 2602, establishing administrative reserve assessment reserve policy. Is there a motion to approve resolution R 2602 by Brandon? Second by Carolina. Got to share.
Carolina's got it.
Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2602, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're on 9, consideration possible action on new production application. And that's going to be the Arden and Maureen show.
Hi, this is Arden.
Hi, Arden.
Hey, so the first application that we have this month is a new production application for William Rutledge. And this is for 1.5 acre feet per year in the southeast sub area. And so this is for a single family home with some trees and native plants on a 5 acre parcel. And it was unanimously recommended for approval by the advisory committee. And we found the risk of material injury to be negligible. Are there any questions about this one?
Any questions?
No.
Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve R 2608, moved by Brandon,
Second.
second by Kathy. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2608, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on B, R 2609. Go ahead, Arden.
Thank you. So this is another new production application for Elisa Medrano. She's requesting 1.8 acre feet per year. Her property is in the central Antelope sub-area in the northwest corner near the boundary with the West Antelope sub-area. And this is for a single family home that includes a detached garage and 2,000 square feet of irrigated landscaping and some shrubs. This was also unanimously recommended for approval by the advisory committee, and we found the potential for material injury to be negligible. Any questions?
Any questions? No, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Brandon,
Second.
second by Carolina. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2609, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on 10, consideration and possible action on transfer applications. Arden, go ahead.
Thank you. So there are 3 transfer applications this month. All 3 of them are to RTS Orchards, and also all 3 of these are very similar to past applications. So I'll give the description all together, and then for approval, y'all can go one by one. So the first one is from Richard Selleck for 75 acre feet of one-time production right transfer. And then Stephen Selleck, also a one-time transfer of 75 acre feet. And then Garindo Resourceful LLC, a one-time transfer of 629 acre feet. So all 3 parties are located in the central Antelope sub-area, and they have their wells that are de-equipped and inactive, so they're not producing from their property. And then it's being transferred to RTS Orchards, which is in the West Antelope sub-area. RTS Orchards does not plan to increase their annual production rate. They have 1,493 acre feet per year in production rights and use between 1,000 and 1,800 acre feet per year. RTS shares the well on the property with Ora Vista. And so when evaluating production, material injury, we use the total production from both parties from the wells on the property, which last year was a little bit under 1,000 acre feet. And water levels in the area have increased near RTS Orchards because their property is near Westside Water Bank. We found the risk of material injury to be negligible, and the advisory committee for all 3 applications unanimously recommended them for approval. Do y'all have any questions?
Arden, I just want clarification. I'm thumbing through my packet really fast. Did you say that they're all central sub? I didn't catch that part. What did you say about they're all central sub going to west sub?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I thought Mr. Selleck's water was on G and 90th east, but I could be wrong. All right, thank you. Our G and 90 is west, but that's fine.
Okay, any other questions? And Arden, are we just doing R 2610 at this time, or go through all of them at this time?
I gave a summary about all three applications. And also I do want to add a correction. Garindo Resourceful's parcel is in the West Antelope sub-area. So that is going from west to west.
West to west?
Just checking.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay. So is there a motion, Derek, to approve resolution R 2610?
Yes. I make that
made
motion.
By Derek. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2610, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried. We're on R 2611. Is there a motion to approve R 2611?
So moved.
Moved by Kathy. Is there a
Second.
second? Second by Derek. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving resolution R 2611, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on item C, resolution R 2612. Is there a motion to approve R 2612?
Make them.
Second.
Wow.
Mhm.
Moved by Carolina, second by Brandon.
Mhm.
Is the best I can do. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? R 2612 is passed unanimously. We're now on 11. I believe that is our administrator. Go ahead, Angel.
Okay, thank you, Rob. We have one replacement well application on this month's agenda. It starts on page 133 of your agenda packet. It's for US Borax, and they are requesting to replace an existing well that collapsed a couple of years ago to ensure redundancy in their system. Advisory committee and staff recommend approval of this application, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? None?
Nope.
Okay, is there a motion to approve R 2613? Moved by Brandon, second by Carolina. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve R 2613, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on number 12. Consideration possible action on non-production well application, and that's going to be our administrator, Angel.
Thank you. This month, we do have 16 monitoring wells on the agenda, starting on page 144 of your agenda packet. We did group these all together to be approved under one resolution. The applications are for the United States Air Force, and it's for 16 monitor wells located at various parcels at Plant 42. These wells are required by Lahontan and are part of their phase 1 investigation at the plant. These monitoring wells will provide site-specific depth groundwater data necessary to define the nature of the extent of the PFAS contamination at the site. And the advisory committee and staff recommend approval of these applications. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve R 2614? Moved by Brandon,
Second.
second by Kathy. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2614, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're on 13. Administrators report.
Okay, thank you, Rob. We
You're
have
welcome.
2 items this month, one being our regular update, and then I'm also gonna give an update on the replacement water request. Starting with the administrative activities, we are currently receiving and processing invoices, processing production reports. The audit field work has started. And in March, we will have our regular scheduled meeting, March 25th at 10 a.m. And we will send reminder notices for the fixed administrative assessments. And for April, I just wanted to remind everybody and put it on their radar that we will have the sub-area management advisory committee in April. Holly, next slide, please. So staff has collected funds for replacement water assessments, and per the agreement between the WATERMASTER and the Antelope Valley State Water Contractor Association dated October 23rd, 2019, staff has put together a request letter, and that letter is on page, 261 of your agenda packet if you'd like to take a look. The replacement water request will be for 550.19 acre feet of water, and that payment amount would be $327,000 or a little bit over.
Recording in
Can y'all
progress.
see the, well, one second. Okay, can y'all see the screen okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. So first we have the summary of new production and qualified small pumpers. These numbers are a little different than they are in the packet because Angel noted that there were some parties that previously had new production that had been revoked, but they came back into compliance. Any questions about these?
Question? Nope.
Great. On to the next. So a brief update on the Willow Springs storage agreement. Their engineering team met with the WATERMASTer engineer to discuss scenario development. So they're testing different scenarios using the Antelope Valley model that they received from the WATERMASTer engineer. And we're providing guidance to make sure that they're testing in a way that aligns with the material injury analyses that we'll need to do. Any questions about this?
Questions?
No.
Nope.
All right, on to the next. So this is a note that we will be sending out a data request for the annual report shortly after this meeting. We send this every year to agencies to get water levels and water quality data. And then there's some agencies that we send some specific questions to related to their water use and storage and surface water use. And so we are requesting that the data is received by April 17th. Do y'all have any questions?
Nope, we're good. Thank you.
Great. And then the last item is a brief update on the reporting app. Really no big updates from last month. Pilot AVEC had tested it and found that the calculated values matched AVEC's production values and recommended a few tweaks. And so we'll incorporate that feedback and begin reaching out to parties who will be a good trial user. And just as a reminder, hopefully, parties have turned in their annual production form to Angel, but for this year, we're still using the 2025 annual production form. Any questions about this?
Nope, we're good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank y'all. That's all I got.
Outstanding art and now in general counsel's report.
We're gonna cover that in closed session.
Okay, thank you. We're now on 16 carryover storage agreements for discussion and direction to general counsel.
We did that.
We don't want to do two more out of it.
No.
I thought we wanted to do some more. Thank you, though. 17 is board members' request for future agenda items. None. We're all happy. Now we're going into closed session. Won't we all get in there by 25 till 12? No. Yes. You get a 7-minute break.
I'll see you, Derek, in the very same.
Motion to go in?
I make that motion to go into closed.
Motion made by Derek to go in closed session, second by Brandon. Any discussion? All in favor of going in closed session, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion's carried unanimously. And Barbara and Angelica, are you going to join us? No? And Angelica will join us. We need them.
Yeah.
What?
Recording stopped.